values, core components in any university, and research is part of it. As teacher, as faculty, as a student, we're one together to this journey, okay? Having a research, not just helping our neighbors outside the building, outside the premises, not just having a quality teachers for their doctorate degrees, etc., but we have to embrace also research as part of our lives. Change the world.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bram. So
Thank
we've
you.
got 2 minutes left, sir, Dr. Prime. There's another one from Joan Lobreco. Will it be possible to provide us a copy of, the presentations? Thank you in advance.
Yeah, great. We'll be sharing all our slides, our materials to all the students. And of course, you have to evaluate after this, okay? Thank you.
Lastly, sir, we've got 1 minute left. Thank you for the presentation, Doctor. I would like to ask how to mitigate constraints while conducting a studies with individual from a different cultural background and languages from Edivaldo Abel.
Again, how do
How to, I think this one is mitigate or mitage,
mitigate
yes, something.
mitigation
Mitage, yes, mitigation, something.
mitigation
Constraints while
concerns, okay?
conducting a studies with individual from different culture, background, and languages.
Yeah, as a researcher, you also have to really that is part of the journey, okay? Doing mitigations, doing positive things, okay? Um, that's part of doing research, okay? As I mentioned to you, with the sharing I have a while ago, research is a holistic as a person. Know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know the persons that you have, and then know the process, know know everything. And of course, the journey doesn't stop there without the presence of your advisor, your supervisor while doing your dissertation, your thesis, etc. Okay, basta, it's always important here. Health is wealth. Okay, health is wealth. Okay, while doing research.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abiliana. So now it's already 9:50 in the morning. So we will have a 10
Thank
minute
you.
break before we proceed to our next speaker. Thank you to all. Welcome back. Hello. Let us proceed to our next speaker. He is currently the acting director of Asia Pacific Research Center, APRC, and the chair of the Ethics Review Board, ARB, at AIIAS. He has been the administration of different Seventh-day Adventist organizations, including being the vice president of finance of the Adventist University of Africa in Kenya. He is pleased to share with the participants the ethical considerations in research. Dr. Kepa O. Pondi. Sir, good morning.
Morning. Well, thank you very much for the introduction. I want to greet all of you this morning. Good morning. I'm very happy to be with you in this webinar. And to begin with, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the leadership of IAS as well as the Philippines Women University for the collaboration between the two universities. And I also want to take this opportunity and thank the organizers of this webinar that has made it possible for us to be here today. And thank you all for choosing to participate in this seminar. I want to share my screen with you at this point as I begin the presentation. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Then, just before I begin the presentation, I would just want to show you a few pictures of IAS. IAS is a very unique institution. It is an international postgraduate university that brings together a diversity from over 70 different countries. We are located at Aguinaldo Highway, or along Aguinaldo Highway, and you are able to see the aerial view of the campus. If you look at all those red roofs on the right of the road, that is IAS, where we are at this moment. This is one of our large buildings that we hold meetings in. It is our auditorium. This is our administration building, and behind you can see the auditorium. This is our library, which I believe is one of the best libraries in the Philippines in terms of resources and facilities that it offers for research. This is the seminary, and this is the graduate school. And we want to thank the leadership of the graduate school, also Dr. Rantung and Dr. Swansea, for facilitating this collaboration. I will go now to the heart of the presentation, research constraints and ethics. I will more be focusing on the ethics side as a constraint, especially as the researchers view it. Ethics is an ever-present concern for all researchers. It pervades every aspect of the research process, from its conception, design, and through the research practice, and continues to require consideration even during the dissemination of the results. In terms of definition, there is no universal consensus on what ethics is. And as you read the literature, you will come across some of these terminologies: moral principles, principles of conduct, responsible conduct, standards of right and wrong, truth, fairness, integrity, moral absolutes. And when you read literature on the Christian ethics, you will not miss the mention of the Ten Commandments as moral absolutes. And this will reflect our choices. And those choices are based on the values that is formed from all these aspects of ethics that we have mentioned. So why ethics in research? Research done on human subjects have always been leveraged between the good of the participants and the good of the society. And therefore, conflict always arises between the two divides. As a result, various policies and procedures have been enacted to mitigate some of these conflicts. Why? In the past, the human subjects have been exposed to various forms of abuses, and a number of crimes have been committed in the name of research that have been performed. Some of these researches have caused irreversible harms to the human subjects, some of them even leading to death. And therefore, it has been necessary, to come in with some ethical considerations to protect the human subjects. One of the things that we as researchers consider is that every person that is engaged in research is ethical. However, the bad apple theory sometimes applies. What does this mean? It means that one bad apple in a basket of apple can spoil the rest. The same, it may apply to research as well. So one unethical research conducted may spoil the research discipline, and it may also spoil for the person, the researcher himself, and also spoil the name of the institutions. There are some of the institutions that have even conducted researches that have led to mitigations, which is not very pleasant. In addition, we operate in an imperfect environment where research is influenced by a lot of incentives, and there are a lot of pressures that we encounter in the process, which may make the researchers to behave unethically. Sometimes even institutions, put a lot of pressure on publish or perish, and therefore a number of researchers tend to take some shortcuts which are unethical so that they can meet these challenges and pressures that they encounter. And because of this, I have indicated earlier that there have been various attempts to address ethics in research. And because of the controversy between the good of the participants and the good of the society, a number of ethical codes and policies have been established. For example, the Nuremberg Code of 1949, the Helsinki Declaration of 1964, which was revised in 1975. There are also the British Educational Research Association, BERA, that basically looks into the conduct of research in educational institutions. And in addition to this, there has been a requirement for universities or research institutions to have what is called institutional review boards, or sometimes in other institutions, they call them ethics review board, to look into the ethicality of researchers before, during, and after the research. I will want to focus a little bit on the ethics review board and their responsibility. Ethics review board are oversight bodies established within the institutions to provide reasonable assurance that researches being conducted are ethical. And they establish policies and standards that are required in conducting research. In addition, they establish codes of ethics in conducting research. This is basically aimed at protecting the participants and also protecting the researcher themselves. This is also to minimize conflict of interest that may arise in the course of research and to restore the confidence of the public in research as a discipline. Some of the responsibilities that are charged with the Ethics Review Board, they may vary depending on the institutions, but I will quickly go through some of these. When we have ethics review boards in the institutions, they are charged with the responsibility of reviewing the research proposals. When they receive this, they look at them and they're able to decide whether to approve it or disapprove it, depending on whether the ethical considerations have been adequately met or not. They may also require changes in the proposal, and therefore they may come up with recommendations that may be addressed to make the study that intended more ethical. In addition, they are required to notify in writing the researchers the decisions that have been made at the board level. Depending on the institutions, the ethical review boards may be charged with the responsibility of following up the studies that have been approved, and if ethical considerations that were designed in the study are not adhered to, they may have authority to suspend such studies or discontinue the study altogether. But again, I say this depends on the institutions and the mandate that have been given the ethic review boards. And then they are expected to keep records, including the proposals that were submitted to them, the informed consent, and even the minutes of the actions, so that in case there is anything that may arise, they are able to produce the evidences that are required. So they also document policies. Of course, I've indicated that earlier, and they also have responsibility of educating researchers. And I believe like this is a very good forum to educate ourselves as far as ethics in research is concerned. Just a little bit in details, the Ethics Review Board looks at the nature or the purpose of the study, the soundness of the methodology, the legality of informed consent, because there are studies that individuals that are being studied may not have the legal capacity to sign the informed consent, and therefore they may look into somebody else who is in charge of the intended research participants to give consent for them to participate, for example, in children and others that we will probably talk about later. They look into whether the study, the research, intended research is voluntary. I will come and talk a little bit about that later. There is a voluntary participation, whether there is a safeguard of privacy and confidentiality of the research participants. They look into the procedures that are proposed, whether the procedures are ethical, the duration of the study. They look into whether there are foreseeable risks that may result from the participation, and also the benefits which the study will yield. They also review whether there are incentives or compensations that research participants are promised, and whether they are commensurate to the participation, because sometimes there are people who give incentives to unduly influence the participants to study or to take part in the study. They also look into the requirements and, of course, statement about dissemination, how they will disseminate the findings, and they are also required to provide the contact information of the research participant, as well as another responsible person, just in case there may be issues that arise from the process of study that may need to be addressed by a third party. Or if there is harm caused to the research participants, they should have contact person other than the researcher to talk to and address those concerns. I will look into this presentation in terms of the ethics that is needed before, during, and after the study. I'll begin with the ethical considerations that researchers need to take, especially before the study. One of them is the research team. You as a researcher, you may be an individual, or you may be taking the study as a team. So what is expected of you? As we have indicated, it is assumed that all researchers are ethical, and therefore you will behave and conduct yourself ethically. You as a researcher or the research team must be knowledgeable enough about the field in which they are intending to conduct research in. And there is competency that is required, so you have to build your competency, or surround yourself with experts to support your study. You need the necessary skills to undertake the study, and if you don't, then you still need to collaborate with others that are skilled in that area to conduct such study. They expect you to be respectful at all levels, and you need to show that integrity is part and parcel of you as a researcher. As a researcher, you need always to be thinking about risks in undertaking a study, and ways and means of mitigating such risks. Then in the research design is very important, because the results that you get are as good as the design itself. And therefore, it must follow the scientific principles of research that have been laid down. The procedures that are expected to be followed need to be followed. There has to be a disclosure of the purpose. There has to be clear gap and originality of your study. The methodology must be sound. It should be addressing the particular purpose of the study. And the exposure to risk must be addressed in your research design. And then in the recruitment process, this is important, because definitely if you are going to collect data from human subjects, you must identify who your participants are. What is the criteria of inclusion and exclusion of the participants? Do those criteria meet the purpose of the study? What are the demographics of the participants or the populations involved in the study? Would you consider homogeneity or heterogeneity in the sample that you are considering to have in your study? And then in terms of sampling, it should be clear whether you are going for random or non-random sampling. For example, purposive sampling. Other studies may involve the vulnerables. If you as a researcher is considering to conduct a study that involves the vulnerables, you need to take additional care and ethical considerations. These are people who have no legal capacity to give informed consent. And some of them do not have freedom of choice or sufficient knowledge and understanding about the study that you're going to undertake. They may include pregnant women, children, the sick, prisoners, refugees, mentally challenged, or those with behavioral disorder, those that are economically disadvantaged. And if you have to, that's among others, and if you have to include them, you must justify their involvement. Why are you not able to conduct your study amongst those people that are able to give informed consent? Instead, you go for the vulnerable. So there should be a clear justification. You must show respect to them and their status, and therefore you need to provide protection and safeguard to them because they are vulnerable. And you have to weigh the risk versus the benefit that is involved in such a study. And for that case, you are required to obtain proxy consent from those who are legally responsible to these vulnerables. In addition, you need to explain very well in your proposal the research setting. For example, how you are going to access the institutions that you intended to study from. The venue itself, the place need to be clear. Who are your participants, the research activities that are involved, the procedures that will be involved in the study, and safety and privacy measures that will be taken as you undertake your study. And therefore, the institutional boards come here handy, or the intermediating institutions that will probably need to give a permission or approvals for you to undertake the study will also feature here. In the beginning, you need approval from your research committee, and then you need the institutional review board, the ethics review board of your institution need to approve your study as well for ethical considerations. The administrators of the various organizations that you intend to collect data from may also need to approve your studies, and therefore you need to make an application or a request for approval of studies in those institutions. If those institutions have their own ethics review board, then your study may also be subjected to additional ethical considerations in spite of the earlier ethical consideration approvals that you might have gotten from your own institution. If the research is to be conducted in public institutions, please identify the relevant research, relevant department that gives approvals for such studies. And then you need to consider getting consent from the gatekeepers as well as the participant themselves. During the study, let me now go down into the informed consent a little bit. There has to be an informed consent that is given to the participants before they begin participating in the study. It must be a written communication. It must explain well the study or the subject matter of the study. It has to describe the research, their involvement and why they need to be involved. And the informed consent should also explain the foreseeable risks that may be involved through their participation. How you will handle their privacy is important. And of course, I mentioned earlier, you need to provide your contact details. And in addition, of course, you will need to give places for signatures so that the participants and the researcher himself would agree upon the engagement that you have gotten into as far as the ethics is concerned regarding that particular study. Then why the consent? One, it safeguards human subjects. It respects their rights and their privacy. It is an additional caution that the researcher takes so that they may protect themselves. And it also helps in avoiding distrust of the researchers. It is more of a legal agreement that regularizes the relationship between the research participant as well as the researcher themselves. As a researcher, you are expected to be very sensitive in conducting the study. You need to show respect throughout. You need to obtain continuing consent during the study, because there may be studies that, for example, you're doing interview, you may continue asking whether it is okay to proceed to the next level. So you need to continue giving consent or asking for consent in the study. You need to monitor safety concerns that may arise in the process of the study, and of course voice them. And if there are changes that you intend to make in the study, you need to notify the participants as well as the institutions that approved your study for ethical considerations. Let me look a little bit in detail the voluntary participation here. So in research, there has to be voluntary participation. This gives the participants the free power of choice without any force, fraud, deceit, duress, and any force that may be used or coercion to make the participants to study, to take part in the study. It also ensures that there is no undue use of position or power to obtain data or to influence the results. There should be no manipulation, and the participants are expected to be well informed of the content of the study so that they can make informed consent. And they should also have the right to withdraw from the participation at any given point of time without any consequences. They need to have that right. That is what we consider to be voluntary participation. And there is also confidentiality and privacy that we have already mentioned, but I want to pick up a few things in details to address. As a researcher, you need to respect personal information to be collected, and therefore you need to highlight those kind of information that needs to be collected. There has to be a proper access and authorized use of such information from the participant, and you need to safeguard the confidentiality of data. This has to do with who will access the data. If it is you alone, you will need to maintain the confidentiality that you played, and if there are others that will come in between, you also need to highlight that. You need to allow for the review of data for any unwanted information. You also need to ensure that there is anonymity. Anonymity here is that avoiding any things that may trace or identify the participants in the study. And of course, the ownership of the data. It is not the researchers. The ownership of the data still remains with the participants. We talked about risk and harm, and here we need to look at what are the risks that are involved. There may be physical risk or harm to the participants, and especially where biological samples are taken. Look at the safety. Are the researchers safe? And are there any possible threats when somebody threats or intimidation when somebody participates in such kind of study? Okay, are you going to handle some sensitive topics that may harm the participant? Those are things that you need to look at. And also, you need to look at the psychological harm that may be caused. There may be mental, emotional, embarrassment, and there may be socio-economical harm that may be involved by participation. Some may even lose their rights by participation, and any possible legal or litigations that may arise need to be addressed. And therefore, as a researcher, you should not subject your research participants into undue stress. Okay, after the study has been done, you've done your data collection and analysis, there are things that you still need to observe. You need to observe standards and procedures, the issues of plagiarism. Those are all ethical issues. You need to ensure that there's disclosure of all facts and accuracy of reporting, whatever you will be reporting. There should not be deception, and you need also to give credit where it is due. In dissemination, you will need to state clearly, your biases, and therefore people are able to assess the accuracy of whatever you are presenting. There should be a peer review. Of course, many journals that would like to publish your study, they will want to see that there has been an ethical review board that approved your study. In terms of authorship, you need to involve all the people that participated in the study. And there is a need to identify the authors with the institutions where they are affiliated to. And if there are any support that you received during the study, it is good to highlight those kind of support and the roles of each individual or organization that gave you the support in the study. And if there are conflict of interest, you should also disclose them. Now, in the process of dissemination, you need to weigh the costs and the benefits of disseminating your findings, and therefore you need to consider how will the audience receive or react to the findings. In research, there are always ethical dilemmas that you will always meet, and these may not have very easy solutions, but as a researcher, you need to be aware of the ethical dilemmas. I'm just highlighting the few that you may encounter. And if you encounter, you need to clearly state your position as a researcher. Will you maintain confidentiality, or will you want to voice out and breach the contract? Will you become a whistleblower? And if you do, then the burden of the proof will rest on you. And in conclusion, I want to summarize by saying that ethics pervades every aspect of the research process. As we saw earlier, the conception of the research, design, research practice, and the dissemination all require the researcher to always think ethically. What are the ethical considerations in all these stages of research, and how should I address them? There's a need for informed consent and voluntary participation in the study, and you need to protect the participants from any foreseeable risk or harm that may arise because of their participation in study. Of course, we are also bringing to your attention that in research, there are ethical dilemmas that you will meet, and you will need to find out how to address them, whether you are consulting with others on how to address them, or you bring them to the attention of the Ethics Review Board, but you need to address them at one point or another. So these are some of the references that I used in coming up with this presentation. There are quite a number, and Maraming Salamat po, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kepa, for sharing your knowledge. And to our attendees, do you have any questions? Please share with us here. So as of this moment, Dr. Kepa, we have a question here. What are the ethical considerations that are needed to overcome these constraints?
Can you come up again with that question?
Yes, sir. What are the ethical considerations that are needed to overcome these constraints?
Okay. As I have, thank you for the question. As I have indicated, you know, there are a lot of constraints when it comes to research. And this is leveraged between the good of the participants as well as the good of the society. What good is your study going to bring to the participants, as well as the good that it will bring to the society? So you are asking that, what are some of the practical ways of overcoming these constraints? If I understood the question very well. So one is that it is very important for a researcher to always educate themselves on research ethics. You need to know what are involved in research and are there ethical issues that may arise during the research. And therefore you need to figure them out in your design, in your planning ahead of time. Always think about ethical considerations. Even just in writing your literature review, there are ethical considerations that you need to make. For example, in citing authors, are you giving credit to them? Okay. Now, if you talk about even the purpose of the study itself, is the purpose of the study very clear, and the questions that you are asking clear to address the purpose? Are they ethical questions? Is the purpose itself ethical? So it is important for you as a researcher, and I'm repeating again that it is assumed, it is an assumption that we make that every person that is engaging in research must be ethical. And therefore you need to know what ethics in research entails. And one way is this kind of forum, this kind of education, so that researchers may be exposed to all the ethical considerations that they need to make in the entire process of the study. I may not give you one particular way of addressing them, but they need to be addressed in the entire process of the study.
Thank you, Dr. Kepa. Dr. Kepa, there's another question from anonymous attendee. What are the difference between confidentiality and anonymity?
All right, thank you very much. Confidentiality has to do with how will you handle the information that you receive from the participant themselves. Will you maintain them confidential? And even the data that you collect from the participants, how are you going to handle them? Are you going to save them in a place where others are not going to access them? Because you promised to maintain confidentiality. And when you talk about anonymity, on the other side, anonymity, it means that the research participants should not be identified unless they give express permission that you need to identify me in the research. This includes even anonymity of the institutions where you are collecting the data from. There are some studies that will always want us to state where you collected the data from. If it is going to the public, they may want to know, they may want to know. But it is up to the participants to say, yes, you can identify us in your study, or we will want to remain anonymous. Nothing should identify us. So again, privacy and confidentiality has to do with how you handle the information or the data that you collect from the participants, but anonymity has to do with whether you are going to identify the participants or not. And most of the studies we report in aggregate, we report findings in aggregate.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Kepa, another from Philip Achoki. Thank you, Dr. Pondi, for the presentation. What are the ethical issues around using personal data collected by a third party?
Okay. Now, a third party here is very interesting. We need to find out whether this data is being handled by the researcher himself or another third party is going to be involved. If a third party is going to be involved in handling the raw data that you collected from the participants, that needs to be clear to the research participants themselves. And you need to put it in the informed consent form so that they agree that this data will be actually be seen by more than one person. And in terms of a third party, you would also be looking at the user, I mean, the people who will consume the findings. So if the people will consume the findings are not going to consume it in its raw form, that is well and good. It must be clearly processed without any identifiable features, must be reported in aggregate, that is okay. But if the third party is going to be involved in handling the data, that has to be authorized by the participants themselves.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Kepa, another one from anonymous attendee. I am currently conducting a study involving high school students. I have coordinated with the principals and the teachers to administer the research instrument. Do I need the students to sign the informed consent, even they are minors? Or is it necessarily that it should be the parents? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's a very good question that we always meet in the process of the study. If you are conducting a study among those people that are considered vulnerables or minor, you need to ask for consent from those who have been given legal authority as guardians over them. So, for example, if it is a boarding school, the parents are not easily available. The principal is in charge as a local parent. And therefore, the principal will need to decide the ethical issues that are involved in the study and give the relevant consent that is needed. But if the parents are accessible, then it is appropriate that you need to seek for the approval from the parents. They need to give a consent.
Thank you, sir. So another one, Dr. Kepa, from Arvin Salmente from St. Andrews High School of Anini-Y Incorporated, province of Antique, Western Visayas. Ethical standards are necessary in doing and conducting research as to measure the veracity of a research paper or a dissertation. How will the researchers conduct their researches in this time of pandemic, where anything or most of the things were done through online platforms?
Okay, thank you for that question. It's very current issue that researchers are discussing, because there are a lot of researches that are being done even online, some even in public media platforms like Facebook and the like. And actually, if you are going to collect data, for example, from the social media, and to use it for research purposes, consent is still needed. You need to contact those people that I'm collecting this kind of data. May you give me the permission to use your data? And if, like for now, we are in pandemic situation, collecting data has become a little bit challenging to the participants, and especially if you are considering those remote areas where you are not able to travel and meet people at this particular moment. So you always need to think of what are the alternative sources of data. Who else can give me data relevant to my study? And where people have access to, internet, you are able to reach them out and collect data. It is important to use online sources. You can use Google Form to send out your survey. You can use Google Meet to collect your data online through video conferencing. But all these, the participants need to give consent so that whatever data that is collected will be used solely for the purpose of the study.
Thank you, Dr. Kepa. To all the participants, we've got 2 minutes left for giving question to Dr. Kepa. So Dr. Kepa, there's one from Girly Samson. She just want to know how to handle ethical considerations in conducting research study in hotels and restaurants, especially on FGD in this virtual world. Thank you and be safe.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not sure whether the participant is a student or a faculty, but it is important to work with your research committee. This is what I would suggest. Work with your research committee, especially when you're designing the study. One of the key questions which you need to address is, who are my data sources and how you must be able to conceptualize. How am I going to collect the data? It is very important to consider the research setting and the research participants and how you will access the people as well as obtaining the data from them. So this comes during the design, and I would suggest that you need to figure it out very clearly, especially with your research team or your research committee. I may not give you some specifics which you need to do, but it has to come as part of the conceptualization of your study.
Dr. Kepa, we've got 1 minute left, so will you still able to entertain this one?
Yes. Okay.
Another one? Okay. Thank you for sharing, Dr. Kepa. How would you consider ethics for multinational, multicultural, and how do you apply it? Consider ethics for multicultural and how do you apply it?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be brief on this because, for example, here in IAS, we have over 70 different nationalities. but we still conduct research. And fairly, what the ethical consideration for conducting a study requires, they are fairly standard. So as much as possible, you need to follow the guidelines and the codes of conduct of the researcher, so that you may need to respect the individualities of the participants if they are sensitive to certain areas. And all this, again, I will say it is important to consider the population that you are thinking of collecting the data from. What are their characteristics? I mentioned the demographics, okay? Multicultural setup is part of it. So if you know the demographics, you need to know a little bit more about their backgrounds. And you need to know a little bit more, and that's why we say that the researcher must be expert in that area of study. So if you are dealing with multinational or where you have cultural diversity, then you also need to understand the culture in which you are going to conduct your study. And that will enable you to discern the ethical considerations that you need to take when you are conducting the study. But as a researcher, show respect to the culture of others.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kepa. And for the other questions that not being entertained within our time limit, so we're finding some time for you to answer this, and we'll just get back to you. And let me remind everyone that the certificates are awarded only after the registration and accomplishing evaluation. Evaluation form URL will show at the end of the webinar. So for now, we will take another 10 minutes break prior to our last speaker. Dr. Kepa, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. afternoon once again. I would like to acknowledge also for the presence of our participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and from the US, Indonesia, Kenya. Thank you so much. And so without further ado, our last speaker is an economist, ex-investment banker, and financial advisor in the Philippines. Is connected with the AIIAS Graduate School as a researcher and a reviewer of several journals. He used to be the chair of the Research Supervisory Council of the STIEJ Research Center from 1986 to 1995 in Jakarta, Indonesia. He is pleased to share his power on research funding, constraint, and solution using integer programming. Professor Emeritus Dr. Eric J. Nasachan, CF, MP, Rep, Underwriter, and Broker. Sir, good afternoon. Sir, you're muted, sir. Eric. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jober, for the introduction. Well, of course, I'd like to thank Dr. Ginger, our president of IAS, to give this opportunity. Also, Dr. Rantung, the dean, and Dr. Swansea, the chair of the business department. And of course, Mr. Marco Benitez is the president of PWU, and Dr. Eframuel Abiliana, the Dean of PWU. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege for me to present my part. Well, I think we have heard, several what constraints are. Several points that points about quality of research, that points to the right dissemination of the data. I remember Dr. Abiliana was very clear, and he did a very presentation saying that that is one of the, you can say, the prevalent constraint. The research, one side, and the beneficiary of the research, how the research is being disseminated. I think this is a very, very crucial thing, and we can what do you call that? Consider them as a constraint itself. Well, of course, time is also a constraint. Anytime, wherever you work with research, funding is also another one, and the quality of research itself. Now, I just want to touch about funding. The research funding, many times, become a what do you call that, constraint in our undertaking. Now we start, of course, first with. Let me open my screen. Okay, we are going to discuss on how we identify research funding in the Philippines. What are the general challenges in order to access research funding? What constraints in research funding prevail and why? How do we solve these research funding constraints using an integer programming? So my files would consist of two. The first thing, of course, this PowerPoint, and the second one is the Excel. And I think I and Mr. Miguel have given the participants pointers for you just in case, if you have not installed the solver in your Excel. So we will, go over this, on discussing this research funding as a constraint. Now, how do we identify research funding providers in the Philippines? Well, of course, we have government grants provided. Oh yeah, by the way, before I forgot, from the records that I have found, the utilization of research funding here in the Philippines is not very high. It's not very high. While we do have this funding, you see, we do not know why. We do not know why. It could be the research centers. It could be that the university have not maximized their efforts as far as applying for this. I give you an example, for instance, of the funding that CHED, the Commission of Higher Education, is giving. Not all are really availing that. You see, we have also like what you have seen on the screen, like from the Department of Science and Technology, the Philippine Council of Agriculture, the Philippine Council of Health, Research, Development, Philippine Council for Energy, Industry, Emerging Technology, of course, CHED, Department of Agriculture, and high value crops development and the Philippine Agriculture and Fishery. Now, these are all sources of funding. Now, according to what I have found, maybe I'm going to present to you the statistic on that. It is not even 50%. I'm not so sure why. But if you notice, most of the more advanced countries, they have utilized them, especially that deals with science and technology. I give you an example why those advanced countries are well industrialized. There is a very strong connection between the education sector and the industry sector on how to use this technology. So the university, come up with the incubator projects. Like, for instance, they make a car, for instance, or they make whatever machines, and they get the funding from the institutions that are providing them, and then they offer them. That's why this skill of these countries in technology has a very strong connections with education. Now. Another thing is the private sector, like, for instance, the LaSalle funding, is agencies. They are very active, giving you a National Institute of Health grants, the Philippine Institute of Traditional Alternative Healthcare, Philippine Statistical Research and Training Institute. These, I have, by the way, I am only citing some. There are some more. There's some more that you can refer yourself to in order to get the funding itself. Now we have also private, but the foreign sector. Don't you think that those conglomerate, surrounding us? Like, for instance, give you an example, Facebook, the Ford Motors, Microsoft, Samsung, Volkswagen, they do not give, or Amazon, they do not give this research funding. No, they do. They do. We can. In fact, IAS in the past, in the department of Dr. Kefa, the APRC, has availed some funding from these foreign institutions. So I believe that these are the corporate sources of research funding that we can avail of. We need to utilize this. What are the general challenges in order to have access to research funding in the Philippines? I think this is also a question that many are asking. Well, I think I have mentioned about those research funding in the Philippines, especially CHED. CHED is very active offering this to our universities here in the Philippines, and I think we need to use that. We need to use that, my brothers and sisters. We need to use that. Challenges to have access to research funding in the Philippines based on the statistical fact of 205 researchers per million. Estimated Filipino as of 2019, in ASEAN. Can you imagine 250 per million? While the other ASEAN, our counterpart, our neighboring country, they have 22,000 per million population. This is what I mean. we have qualified sources. We have good sources. Why don't we use this? We use this, utilize this funding from them. Lack of qualified researchers in the Philippine educational institution capability to conduct research. Lack of government direction in identifying right sources, and mismatch of the CHET goals with that of educational institution. Research funds received are expended based on merits. The last one, the mismatch of CHET goals with that of educational institution. I think this is one that has been identified by Dr. Abellana as a constraint. CHET wants this, but it was not delivered by our university. So there's a mismatch of that. The objective is not well served. I think we need to have. The beneficiary is not getting what they want in this research. You see, the funding is there. We can just use it, but of course, the research itself per se is also important for us. This is just a flow of a research funding from grant providers down to research centers. I think we have, at least I'm giving three, sources here. The endowment-based donor, okay, the endowment-based donor. Every university, like IAS, like PWU, has these donors who is giving this endowment. Well, when I say endowment, of course, the money that is being donated is rather big, okay? And of course, the money comes from our research budget. PWU has the research budget. IAS has the research budget. And of course, the government, private sector that, we have gone over just now. It goes to the research centers. In our institution, it goes to Dr. Kefa in the APRC. And Dr. Kefa, together with the committee, will sit down, will consider all research proposals that they have received, and they are going to evaluate. You see, these are basically the flows of research funding itself. From the higher donors, or the higher research grants providers. What constraints in research funding prevail? Based on the related research finding, I think I have given you some of the sources. Okay? Constraints in research funding access in the Philippines are basically indebted to the average level of research capability. In particular, the constraints are comprised of, number one, time efficiency, skill coherence, the meritorious performance, and the funding itself. Now, let's see on the timing efficiency. The time efficiency, of course, is relative in every institution. You need to, sometimes, you said that, okay, my budget for time is 1 month, but it is more than 1 month. You see, sometimes, the time budget is 2 months, but, you did it in 1 month. There's some mismatch in the time efficiency itself. We need to, observe more carefulness in this time. Skill coherence, this one is itself. The skill coherence, has something to do with the quality of the research itself. Dr. Kefa has mentioned about the ethical consideration and how the research should be, done, and whether quality has some relationship with ethics. You see, this is very important. How the personal research has been peer reviewed. Remember, peer reviews do not take it for granted. Peer reviews is very important. And also, this is also an ethics. Yeah. I've been active in writing articles, journals, in peer reviews journal, and of course books. But in the articles and reviews journal, I do not feel complete if I do not ask my friends, to peer review mine. you know, this is a benefit for us. Take the advantage of this, you know. So the skill coherence itself, the skill of the quality of research, you know, many times, you know, is a constraint. Another thing, meritorious performance. Here, this is the thing that I am going to, it has a relationship between the meritorious performance and the funding here itself. Yeah, I am going to see the funding constraint. Now, I have this, I define it as a vicious circle of funding constraint. You see, starting with the funding constraint, you have the skill coherence. I think that is the quality of the research, you know, the knowledge of writing a research. You know, writing a research, you know, you need some skill. You need some knowledge and understanding and comprehension. Once you do not have this, you know, you can, bet for sure that you're not going to come up with this, what do you call it, quality. Skill coherence, the time efficiency, and the funding efficiency, and the meritorious performance before it goes again to the funding constraint. They are, you know, comprising in one that I call a vicious circle of funding constraint. This is the meritorious that I would like to share with you because it has something to do with the exercise just now, with the Excel. Yeah, we start with a rubric. A rubric, well, I'm using a Likert scale of, 1 to 10. Normally, we are using 1 to 5, but normally in my exposure before, I've been in research for many years, starting 1986 until now. And when I assumed my responsibility as the chair of the supervisory council, you know, I always been very particular to the committee. You see, the rubric should come up with some, like evaluation. You see the evaluation of 25%. The content analysis is 40%, the descriptions 18%, and the other criteria 17%. Well, this rubric, you know, is relative. Some university is using their own style. Okay, some university are using a certain universal style, or they are using a unique style of their own. You see, this is a relative. So this is a suggestion that I make. For us to see how this meritorious work, okay? Like, for instance, for evaluation, it comes up with the originality of the study, the gap addressing, the feasibility of implementation, the content analysis, the writing quality, the appropriateness of the application, the accuracy of thought, the coherence in the research skill, the justification of research method, in the description, the clarity of the thought, the holistic approach, other criteria like motivational to the objective, distinguishing the study trait, you see. So in short, I think this meritorious rating is very important. Now, we have been receiving, let's call this, the research center has been receiving proposal, okay? Now, the thing is, they have a proposal here. And the total proposal amount to, let's say, 1,800 peso, yeah? Let's say. But the fund that has been appropriated to the research center is only 1,200. How are you going to, come up with a right and fair judgment and evaluations of whom will get this? You see? So maybe you have 6, 7, 8, a total of 1,800 pesos. But the amount that has been appropriated to you is 1,200. How? You see, sometimes, you know, you come up with, or we come up with subjective, judgment. We think, sometimes the worst thing, sometimes favoritism comes in. We should not do this. We should not do this. Favoritism is not part of that. This proposal is good to our department, or this proposal is my nephew, or whatever. No. No, no, no. We need to come up with an objective. And now we are going over how we come up with this objective. How this 1,800 pesos or eight proposal, will get the 1,200 constraint in funds. The funds is a constraint. The availability of the funds is only 1,200 peso. But those proposal coming is 1,800. You see? You understand what I'm saying here? Now, integer programming will help us. It is not a very difficult tool. No, I've been using this for many years, and I think it is good. It is good. If you like to use judgment, I think it's fine. But do not use favoritism and do not use more, what do you call that? Sometimes, there's a joke in our, team before in the past. You evaluate by feeling. Management, there's management by result, management by objective, there's something, management by feeling. No, do not let this happen. Yeah, do not let this happen. Now, in the integer programming, basically we have the objective function. So the objective function is basically the rating itself. Yeah, subject to what? Subject to is the subject to the limited funding. Yeah, like what I mentioned. The funding is only 1,200 peso, but those who have submitted their proposal, total amount is 1,800. So how are we going to work with this? Now we will see how itself. Now, you see, the rubric itself comes up with this, I think you can see from your screen, this especially Likert scale here. You have the rating here. Yeah, you have the rating. You have the rating, and then you have the overall rating there as the average LSP. Yeah, which is the Likert scale points that you can assign for each proposal. Yeah, for each proposal. Yeah, of this 1,800 peso. Yeah, for each proposal. Now we will see. Yeah. Okay, so there's definitely a constraint here. I give you an example. For instance, here there's a researcher, Andrew Reyes, funding constraint of 300,000 peso and LSP of 6.6 and time for 4 months. Together with Andrew Reyes, there are 5 more other researchers who have submitted their research proposal for the same research. The total requested fund from the 6 is 1,800. Yeah, pesos. Yeah, well, I think I've used a million here, so 1,800,000, while the total funds available is only 1,200. You see, so there is definitely a constraint. See, now we are going to see, and we're going to use Excel. I understand that I have sent the guidance for you to install the solver in your Excel. Yeah, maybe some of you have not installed it, some of you have that, but I'm going to share with you the ways itself, the mechanism of how you going to let me stop share, and then I share for the Excel itself. Okay, I think this is the one. I believe that everybody has received this. Yeah, everybody has received this. Then I want you to take a look. Yeah. So this is the thing here. I said that the total funding: Andrew, John, George, Kimberly, Lisa, Gandhi, Marco, a total of them, well, 7 of them, not 8, with a total funding of 1,800. But remember, the constraint in fund is how much? 1,200, you see? And you see, these are the meritorious point. Andrew got 6.6, John got 8.1. The second highest. Gandhi is the first highest. Oh no, second highest. Marco is the first highest, 9.2. You see, of course, using 1 to 10, a Likert scale. You see, and the fund they are asking is this one. You know, Andrew 300, John 250, and so on and so on. Now, the thing is, we need to decide from these 7, which one? This is the answer. This is the answer. You see, George and Kimberly do not get. Yeah, we are going to, exercise how we come up with this. Yeah, easy. This is an easy, tool. Yeah, for us to work. And I believe that I wish that many research, centers or research agency will use this technique. Yeah, very easy. Avoid come up with a sentimental judgment, come up with a subjective judgment as far as the proposal, even using favoritism. No, use an objective one. And this integer programming using the solver can help you and can help us. Yeah, you see here, this is the answer. So only Andrew, John, Lisa, Gandhi, and Marco get the the funds itself. Yeah. Okay. Now, I want you to, all of you go back to your Excel. I think I have sent you this one. Oh yeah. By the way, before there is a little correction. I want you to go. Can you go on your correction here? In number 3, this is the step-by-step procedure I've given you. The sum product is not B6, so this is B6, yeah, B6. So it's not B before. I think in the previous, I think it is B7 or B5. I'm not so sure. So please, correct it to B6. So here, B6 to H6, yeah, and then B11 to H11. And also likewise for the meritorious, for the merit, yeah, B7, this is B7, yeah, here, B7, yeah, B7, yeah, and then from H7, B is 11 to H11. Please correct them, because that is a little mistake that I noticed that I didn't have the time to send to the participant. Okay, now let us get this one here. Yeah, let us get this one. Easy. Yeah, easy. Let us try use just the down here. Just copy it. Yeah, just copy it. Let's copy this. Okay, we copy this and then. We'll just put in here. Okay, now we have this here. Yeah. Okay, let's just erase this. Yeah, we would like to start from the scratch. So let's erase this. Yeah, and then let's erase this one. You know, if the y is 1, yeah. If there's no, because you got 0. Yeah. So it is between 0 and 1. You know, I think this is the what if Excel analysis. Yeah. So let's erase this, the requested fund, and also the objective function. Let's erase it. Okay, you get that? No. And then here you see here the budget is 1,200 here. Yeah, 1,200. Yeah, you see this is the constraint. Yeah, we would like to see how we're going to see. Okay, now it is clear now. Okay. Well, the first thing that you need to do, you need to do the objective function here. In the objective function, I think I have also given you, maybe I can send this to you again, yeah, to you, because I have added some guidelines here. Here, this is the guidelines that I've added here, yeah, just because the guidelines, I have sent before is this one here, yeah, this one here. But this one, I have not put it before. But I think I am going to ask Mr. Miguel to send to those who, register and at the same time send their evaluation sheet. Yeah. Okay. Now let's put the cursor here. Yeah. I think it is in B53. Yeah. And then you enter the formula equal. yeah, some product, okay, some product open, yeah. What is this? The objective function, okay? Now, the objective function has to do with the meritorious here. Yeah, so the meritorious. So I think this is the thing. You highlight this, okay, from Andrew to Marco, and then comma, okay, and then now you you highlight this what if. This is the binary function, yeah, 0 to if y is 1, yeah. Okay, now you what do you call that? Highlight it and then close the parentheses and enter. You got 0. If you don't get 0, then you might have inputted wrong data. Yeah? Okay, good. And then after the objective function, now we go to the constraint. The same thing. Okay? Equal some product. Okay? Open the parentheses. Now you go to the constraint. What are the constraint? The funding, right? The funding is the constraint. So starting from Andrew, you know, Andrew up to Marco, then you close the parentheses and then enter. You got, there's something wrong here. We'll start again. Sum equal some product, and then you open the parentheses. Okay, and then what is this constraint? Fund. Oh, starting with what do you call it? Andrew to Marco, and then comma, and then you go to the binary, yeah, and then you got this, and then close the parentheses and enter. Yeah, you got 0. If you got other than 0, check again. Yeah, check again. You might have inputted wrong data. Okay. Now, I think I have given you some of the here, the step 1, step 2. But in your file now, I think, you know, you have not seen that. I can send to you again for this. Yeah. Okay. Once you have this, then put the cursor here in the objective function, and then now you start opening the solver. Yeah. You open the solver. So you got the data. Yeah. The data, and then you got the solver. Yeah, here this is solver. So you click the solver. Okay, now there is what do you call that? Some data. Why don't you erase this? Yeah, because we would like to start from the scratch. Yeah, we would like to start from the scratch. Okay, here we just delete this and this one here. Then we just delete this. Now it is scratch. Okay, now we input it. Yeah. That's why, you know, I said, why don't you put the, what do you call that, the objective function here? Because this is the first set objective. It should be B53. This is B53. It's fine. You're done. Yeah. And then you say, okay, set objective 2. Make sure what you are going to do here, you're going to maximize your merits. Yeah. You're not going to minimize here. You're going to maximize your merits. So please click this maximum. Now, subject, yeah, by changing variable cell. Now you put the binary here. Yeah, the binary. Yeah, the binary functions. Okay, starting with Andrew to Marco. This is the what if. Yeah. Then you got it here. So that is B46 to H46. Okay. Now, once you get them done, yeah. So you have the set objective here, and then you got the constraint. Then you go to the subject to the constraint. So you're going to fill up the function here. You know, you click the add. You click add. Yeah. Now, what the first what you call that you do here is this one, the request, the constraint itself. So click this here. Now it comes out there. It appears B50. Yeah, and B50, the fund, the fund, the total fund should be lesser than the funds available. Yeah, so that's why it's a, so you go to this middle, what do you call that, box. You see there's lesser. It should be lesser here. Yeah, because besides lesser, you have equal, you have larger, you have the integer, you have the binary and the difference. So in this case, lesser. Lesser than what? Lesser than the amount constrained, which is this one here. Yeah, which is this one here. Yeah. So you put your cursor here, constraint. Yeah, and then you just go to this cell that is D50. Yeah. So you click that. So it means that B50 should be lesser than D50. Okay. Now and then you just okay. Yeah. Click OK. Yeah. You got it. Yeah. You got it. Okay, so this is the first thing on the subject constraint. And then the second one, anyway, this is easy. The other, the other exercise will have more than 2. This is only 2, yeah? So you click another one for the second one. The second one, now you come up with this one, the binary, yeah? The binary. So you highlight this binary, done, yeah? The y is equal to 1, but if it's 0, then it's not. Yeah. So it is the what if. Now you go to the middle box here. As I said, it is not lesser than. It is not equal. It is not more than. It is the binary. So click the binary. Click the binary, and you're done. Okay. Then okay. Okay. Then you're done. And next thing you see here, you are solving the method. Select the right solving method. You have, we are using simplex linear programming. Yeah, the simplex linear programming. We are not using the GRG nonlinear. We are not using the evolutionary. We are not using the stationary, no, but we are using simplex. So click simplex, we are done. Okay, and then you solve. Click solve here. Yeah, click solve here. And then the solver results said, okay, fine. You keep the solver solution. Okay. Phew. What did you got there? What do you got there? George and Kimberly are singled out. So those who got the, what do you call that? The funding is Andrew, John, Lisa, Gandhi, and Marco. We are done. Now, when you exercise, you can use what do you call that? Different what do you call that here? You can use okay. Let's go from scratch. Okay, but of course we do not have the time. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, what I'm going to say is you can just use. Remember, this is total is 1,800. Yeah. If you notice from here, then it is 1,800. Yeah. So 1,800. So you receive, the research center receive 1,800, but the funding is only 1,200. You see? Now, to whom should we give? To Andrew, John, George, Kimberly, Lisa, Gandhi, or whom? Yeah, you can say, okay, maybe you have only 800 here. Yeah, maybe 800. You can work like what I have done just now. Yeah, because our timing, I think I'm glad that I have gone over with you this one. In case you need my what do you call that help, please email me or email Dr. Kefa or email Dr. Abeliana. Yeah, and you can get my number and you can ask me. Yeah, just in case. I wish that the research center, wherever you are, will use these techniques. An easy technique, and yet you are still uplifting the ethical value because there's no favoritism, there's no subjective judgment, no, there's no error, but it's objective. Why? Because you have used the right method to come up with the right way of coming up with the with those who are eligible for that. May God bless you, all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric.
Thank you.
We do have a question here, Dr. Eric.
Yes.
What techniques may we use to overcome this funding constraint?
Yeah. Remember, I think I have to share the screen again.
Yes, we do have 5 to 8 minutes left for you,
Yeah.
Dr.
Sure.
Eric. Thank you, sir.
Here. Yeah, the question here, you have 3 layers here. Yeah. The first layer is the provider, the grant providers, whether it is the endowment-based donors, whether it is the school themselves, whether it is the government-owned like CHED, like private sector and so on. And then it goes to the second layer, which is the research center, and then, of course, the researcher. Now, the question is what technique we are going to use, right? Now, what I have described is the technique using this non-integer programming from this second layer to the third layer. Now, if you are interested to know what technique for you to get the fund, to overcome this fund, you can always get in touch with these donor, with this grant providers. Easy, you can get. Yeah, if you're interested in health, you go to WHO. If you are, in the social and economic, you go to UNDP, or you go to the World Bank, for IMF, for and some even the conglomerate. These companies can help you, can help us. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Thank you, sir. So anyone from our participants, we've got 6 to 8 minutes left to entertain by Dr. Eric. Is there anyone else from our participants? No more? Please, the floor is so much open. So still have 6 minutes left. The floor is still open. So also a reminder from me, let me remind everyone that the certificates are awarded only after registration and accomplishing evaluation. Evaluation form URL will show at the end of the webinar. Thank you. So I suppose there's no more question. Oh yes, there's one, Dr. Eric.
Yes.
What role does funding play in the research process?
Okay, what role does funding play in the research process?
Yes, sir.
Well, I think funding plays a very important role. We are striving to get funding. Yeah. Why? Because we would like to do research. But again, be careful in addressing the points that Dr. Abellana is a very valid point. Sometimes, or not sometimes, many times, the research is not addressed according to the need of the beneficiary. Yeah, the topic, is not right. You see, so I think we need to address this very careful. So funding is very important. Yeah, funding is it plays a very important role as far as you do your research. Do you like to use your own funds? Go ahead. But why should you use your own fund if you can get several sources, several funding? Yeah, provided you come up with the right research, the quality research itself. You can always ask. You can always ask. Yeah. I hope that is what I can help. There's none other than that answer. It plays a very important role, funding.
Dr. Eric, there's one from an anonymous attendee. Is it
Yes.
okay to request for funding for more than one funding agency?
Oh, yes, yes. Go ahead. Go ahead. In fact, you need to the research center needs to get as many funding, as many grants. Not just the grants. No, like for instance, PWU and IS can get in touch with Chet. Oh, there's a lot of funding there, I tell you. Please do it, maximize that. Chat will give you the funding. Not just that, these are international organizations. Not just that, even those what do you call that I have mentioned to you just now. I have shown those companies, like Facebook, Microsoft, Ford, you can just mention those. They are giving funding. I do not know. I think if you go to University of the Philippines, I think before when you enter and then when you go south, there is a research center. I do not know the name, but I think that's a Japanese company, if I'm not mistaken. So this Japanese company, is collaborating with the education sector for the students to come up. Like for instance, they come up with a very good incubator project. Let's say making a COVID vaccine, for instance, or making a machinery for the agriculture, or making a small automobile or what, and this company, will get this, and if they find it feasible, they will produce it, and you will get the research center will get what? Will get the good royalty. Why? Because it is going to be registered in the DTI as what? As your trademark, as your what do you call that? Intellectual property, as your patent. Yeah, I think this is what I can what do you call that? Answer.
Is there anyone else from the participants? Still a few minutes left for Dr. Eric to entertain your questions. So, sir, from anonymous attendee, Dr. Eric, clarification: research team members receive financial assistance during the conduct of study. Will this not qualify under double compensation because you are paid by your institution during the conduct of study? What's your thought on this matter?
Yeah, okay, good. I think this is a very good answer. I may also ask Dr. Kefa to share also after what I have. I'm sharing of what we have experienced for many years in Indonesia, in our institution. Since I am overseeing that, I have to make sure that student or employees who are involved in the research, will get what they got. Will get what they are entitled for. Okay. Now, besides salary, in case it is a staff of the university, if they come up with the research, my understanding is that they will get the grant, and they get they will do well. Of course, the grant is intended for his research or her research, not for their own thing. Yeah, and I believe this is part of the development. Yeah, for faculty, this is for faculty development, for the professor's development itself. Maybe Dr. Kefa can share yeah, for Aya's case.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nutrition, for that. What I would add to what you have said is that when you are receiving funding for research, it is not meant to go towards your salary or compensation or allowances. It is meant to meet the research expenses.
Yes.
And therefore, the researcher needs to document all the expenses, budgeted, all the costs that are involved. And therefore, when they're requesting for the funding is specific to meet those specific requests. And maybe just in addition to the earlier question that was also asked in relation to that, you can also receive double funding for the study, for the research project, so long as you need to declare to all the parties that are involved in the funding that you are also being funded from these other sources. So it has to be very clear the role each funding agency is playing, otherwise it will cause conflict of interest. And it is just unethical just to hear that a study that was funded by another agency was also funded by this without declaring it. So it is important that all the agencies funding the same research project, the researcher should disclose their role, to what extent they are receiving the funding for that particular project.
Thank you, Dr. Kefa.
Thank you. Dr. Eric, there's one
Yes.
question from Elaine Teves.
Yeah, okay.
Her question is if the research already on the proposal stage, are the proponents still eligible to apply for a funding? Thank you again, sir.
Yeah, you start of course with a proposal. Sometimes you know, it works two ways. Maybe the best way is the first way. You can consult the research center what they need, what the beneficiary of the research center need. Okay, then you do the proposal. Or the second one, you have your own proposal and you offer it to the research center. So it can work two ways. You know, I do not know if there are another ways, but I believe that preparing a proposal first and then offer it to the research center is okay. But the best thing is just ask what they need, and then you do the research and come up with a proposal.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eric. So is there anyone else? 3 minutes left from the participants. Okay. So Elaine Teves already answered by Dr. Eric. Thank you. So no more. So I could proceed now. So thank you so much, Dr. Eric, for this for that last question. This is addressed to all our speakers. Why research sometimes not a smooth process for our universities, graduate schools, students, and faculty? Anyone from the speakers?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll take this question first.
Yes.
Um, in every university or every institution, there's always a system for best practices and the likes where we have this established research center or the graduate studies office. It always boils down to the communications or the relationship of the students where he is or she is determined to be of help, and it's always the students side first to inquire, to really persevere how it can be of help. It's always the university is always of help to the students where this engagement of research is part and parcel in everything that we do in academy or as faculty or teachers. So in other words, there has to be a two to tango. The students need to be really immerse and ask for assistance and approach every office that what's this for assistance. And of course, in PW, we always have teachers grants or even us for deloading teachers or 6 unit scores for him or her to undergo research. And of course, if it's published for ISI journal or Scopus Index journals, you'll be getting some cash incentives. That is our support to the faculty and of course the graduate school. When we have this new um, Chad advised that the graduate school student need to present his or her paper abroad and to partner with his or her advisor. That's a better relationship. So there's always a collaboration systems approach with the faculty, the advisor, and the students. So I always encourage students to always communicate with the advisor, with the thesis advisor or doctorate supervisor, for them to really have a smooth journey in their writing, in their thesis or dissertation writing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Frank. Sir
From
Eric.
my side, that is what Dr. Abeliana mentioned is between the school and the students. But for the research center itself, sometimes that makes it not efficient. It's because of these constraints. Sometimes funding is a constraint. And one thing is that I'm impressed with what Dr. Abeliana was mentioning. Sometimes the beneficiary do not get what they need. You know, the topic is not right. You see, there's a mismatch between what the research is addressing and what the beneficiary, because we need to disseminate this. Do not think that once you do the research and then okay, you just put it in your drawer. No, that's a very big mistake. You do the research. Why? Because you like to contribute to the body of knowledge, and you like to contribute to not just the body of knowledge, but also for the welfare of the society. So they need to hear that. And sometimes this skill is also another constraint. There's some, of course, we've been discussing about this constraints, okay, that made the research process not smooth.
Yeah, maybe just to add a little to what the other panelists said. On the part of the students, you realize that in spite of taking research courses, when it comes to technical research writing, it is very difficult on their part. There still need to be a lot of understanding. I have had a lot of students coming to me on how do I write, for example, just a statement of a problem, for example. How do I write a research gap in an acceptable way? And when it comes to crafting research questions, it is so difficult. It is so abstract for many of the students, especially that are coming into the writing. You go all the way to ethical considerations that we have discussed. They don't even understand why you are asking them to put all this in writing. They still need to be nurtured in the process. And the methodology part of it is a whole difficult process. So it is not really that smooth. But I would like to say that for students, it is a learning process. And there would be a back and forth, you need just to keep consulting with your advisor, with people who have gone through it before you, get ideas from here and there, work with your peers so that you are able to comprehend the entire research process. But I assure you, it is not that smooth, especially from a learning perspective. But you need to stay focused, stay interested with the research project that you're undertaking. And of course, on the other side, for faculty, I know time is a big constraint because they have the teaching load and other responsibilities. So again, it is not very smooth. But anyway, that is part of what it takes in the academic world.
Thank you, Dr. Kepa. Dr. Eric, we've got 5 minutes left. Will you still able to entertain these 3 questions for you?
Yeah, yeah,
Would
sure.
it be
Yeah,
fine for you,
right.
sir?
Is it for
So
me or for the
yes,
other?
sir. Yes,
Okay.
for you, Dr. Eric. For anonymous attendee, how do school gain from these external fundings as presented? Some HEIs are gaining funds from this research fund to subsidize their operation. Thank you.
Well, if we, how can we gain? Okay, of course, the gain can be in the form of that you have addressed the demand of research, okay, from your beneficiary. Second thing, of course, in terms of monetary value, well, basically, you're not gaining anything, but except that you are able to run your research center. Okay, sometimes you can also play around with some markup. Like for instance, if you get 100 pesos, from a certain donor, if you can do it the project for let's say 60 pesos, then automatically you get the 40 peso for the other purposes of the center itself. But basically, accounting wise, these what you call grants are booked in the journal as an income. Yeah. So basically, it is an income for the research center, even for the what do you call that, for the institution under which the research center belongs. I think that's what I can say.
Maybe just to share a little bit of experience from our side, we have engaged in some funded research that has benefited the institution in many ways. For example, this research needed us to have a good office, so we had to, factor into the budget some expenses for renovating the office, buying of the furniture, buying of the computers that will be used by the research participants. At the end of the day, these facilities will remain with the institution. So at the end of it, it is an improvement overall. You don't look at it as how much am I gaining towards the operations, but in your budgeting, you can factor in those expenses that will go towards improving the institutions. We have had even AC fixed into some offices because of research. You need AC in some offices. We say we don't want to work in this environment. We have to have AC. So you build that into the research budget. So it goes into all those. So figure out when you are designing your study, factor in all those foreseeable expenses, and some definitely, much of it will benefit the institution as well.
I like to add a little bit more, Mr. Joper. I just want to share. Maybe it is.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 3 minutes left. 3 minutes left.
Yeah,
Yes.
if it is good, then you can get, or if not. Before, when I was still active in overseeing the research center of our school in Jakarta, like for instance, we got a grant from the World Bank, for instance. Let's say we got 1,000 rupiah, for instance. Okay, 1,000. Let's say, we are not going to, my direction to the research center is not to utilize the whole 1,000 rupiah. No, get a certain percentage for the operation of the research center. You see, so this is how I'm just sharing. Yeah, I'm just sharing. Those who have heard what I have shared can do it, or you can ignore it and so on. But I think basically you should also mind to your own research center, the operation of your research center. Thank you, Mr. Joper.
Thank you, sir. 1 minute left. Sir, will you still? Or shall I proceed to the synthesis? So one last question. The question is, if that if what research item or proposal or topics could be funded, are you offering online coaching for research studies?
Okay, online coaching for research study.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I would
proposal
like to
topics
ask,
could be funded.
yeah, I like to ask Dr. Kefa and maybe Dr. Swansea can also share our practice here, okay, on this. Can you repeat the question again, Mr. Jober?
Yes, sir. What research item or proposal or topics could be funded? And the other one is that the coaching online. That's
Coaching
the
online,
question.
yeah, so
Yeah,
the coaching
yeah.
online.
Proposal. Yes, research
Mm.
item or proposal or topics could be funded.
Coaching online, yeah.
Yes.
I would like Dr. Swansea to speak on this much, but I believe like during this pandemic, almost all our learning and teaching activities have gone online, including coaching. Dr. Swansea has a number of students that he is supervising. I also have a number of students that I am helping to analyze their data, and many of them are spread across the continents. And we are able to meet over Zoom. We are able to schedule meetings to discuss. And of course, the feedback can also be given in writing. But I believe, Dr. Swansea, you have more to say on this.
Yes, you know, coaching and doctoral dissertation supervision or masteral thesis dissertation or even undergraduate thesis supervision is not easy during times of pandemic, and even under normal times, these are not things that can be easily done and achieved. What we have done here at IS is that much of our supervision of dissertation theses has gone online, and it was very smooth for us because we have already been using various platforms for submission of student manuscripts and also giving feedback. One of the first things that we did, this was many years ago, when we had distant learning centers and we had PhD scholars, masteral scholars doing their projects and doing their dissertations in these distant learning centers, we created a platform, dissertation and thesis advising platform. It can be Moodle based, it can be learning platform based, learning management system based, learning management system, LMS platform based, where students, all of the students have, they log in, they create submissions, and they receive feedback from their supervisors promptly, because all of these are kind of timed, and also the department chair or the research chair or director can actually foresee if feedbacks are coming on time or not. And with the use of dissertation and thesis advising platform, pandemics, volcanoes like we had at IS and at Tagaytay should not be a problem, and things can go smoothly. But you need to set up a platform. That's the key. And then secondly, once you have the platform, you need to set up a protocol for how dissertations and theses would be advised. In the protocol, things like what is the lead time, what kind of feedback the students can expect. And one of these, once these protocols are well defined and the ground rules are well set, dissertation and thesis advising can be smooth even in times of pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Swansea and Dr. Kefa. From me, I do not see any problem in that. Yeah, we've been doing this, even in the pandemic. Well, of course, starting even not in the pandemic time, we are using this online coaching. Dr. Swansea has mentioned about the platform. The platform should be clear. Like, for instance, we are using Moodle, for instance, to get there and communicate with that. Or even I'm just using this one here, Messenger or WhatsApp. Everything is good. Or if you create a link for the Zoom, I think it's much better. So you can get online coaching is not a problem. I believe.
Yes, 1 minute left to go, so we could able to start for Dr. Blanco for the synthesis. Thank you so much for all the speakers. So, and to give us the synthesis, we have Dr. Angelina Blanco, ma'am. Thank you.
A pleasant good afternoon to everyone.
Good
Is it
afternoon.
loud and clear?
Yes.
Okay, ma'am,
Okay,
clear.
so yes, so for the synthesis, thank you for the three panelists who really gave a very good, comprehensive, extensive discussion of the topics at hand. So we start with Dr. Prime Abellana. He discussed the levels of research constraints, starting from choosing the right topic, very important, should be relevant and timely to the times, selecting the right methodology, finding the study participants, getting the institutions to participate, staying motivated and working your plan, and dealing with your data. Data is very critical in the analysis of your manuscript, and it should be consistent at all times. It should support all recommendations. Dr. Prime says that this is a journey with the students and the faculty and the school, and that the school is there to help the graduate students. And of course, in these times, the biggest constraint is the COVID pandemic. So research has gone into a new level because of the COVID constraint, where research will be a little more difficult, with all things being online, with the Google Forms, the interviews, the Google Meet, the video conferencing. But it can be done with the help of the university. Then we have Dr. Kepa Pondi, who discussed research constraints and ethics. Ethics, he said, is a ever-present concern for all researchers, and we did not realize how ethics was so important when he went through the process. And he was saying it pervades every aspect of the research process, from conception and design through the research practice, and continues to require consideration during the dissemination of the results. That is from the beginning, from before, during, and after the research process. He also gave the functions and responsibilities of the ethics review boards. For the before, he said before the research process, very important was the research team, the research design, recruitment, vulnerable, research setting, and the approval. For the during, important are the informed consent, why consent, research conducts, the voluntary participation, confidentiality, and privacy. In the Philippines, we have this Philippine Data Privacy Law. So again, we have to adhere to that. Risk and harm. For the after, we have the integrity and quality of the research. We have to follow standard procedures. And then the topic of plagiarism, which many researchers go into, and they have to watch this, disclosure of facts, deception, giving credit to who needs the credit. Then you have the dissemination of research findings, the accuracy, the ERB approval, affiliation, support roles, and cost and benefits. You also have to meet ethical dilemmas like the observation of abuse, controversial findings, and member checks, and also the burden of proof. So in conclusion, he says, yes, ethics pervades in every aspect of the research process. It goes through the before, during, and after. And we should all be aware of ethical standards and protocols in all the researches that we make. And for the last speaker, Mr. Eric, Dr. Eric Nasution, tackled the constraints in research funding and their solution with a simple integer programming. So as he discussed, there are lots of funding institutions in government, in the private sector, and even the private foreign sector. And he was saying the utilization is less than 50%. So the research funds are not being used, are not being maximized. And why is this so? We are not using the available funds. Available when we say that funding is a problem. And then he goes on to discuss what are the general challenges in order to access research fundings. And he just said some of them are lack of qualified researchers in the Philippine institutions, capability to conduct research, lack of government direction in identifying right sources, mismatch of CHED goals with that of the educational institutions, and research funds received are expended based on merits. He also gave the constraints in research funding. Why? Why? What are the constraints? They are composed of time efficiency. It's a vicious circle, he said. The funding constraint is a vicious circle. Composed of the time efficiency, the skill, coherence, meritorious performance merit, and funding efficiency. So how do we solve these research funding constraints? And he shared with us a very useful tool through using an integer programming. Very useful, no? So it's a research merit rubric criteria composed of evaluation of the research, content analysis, the description, and other criteria. So this merit rating dissolves the subjectivity and favoritism, as he was saying. This is an objective tool that can be used by all institutions, funding agencies for research. He even went into the details of the Excel, no? The Excel, how to get the solution. So the objective function, and he even gave an illustration of a case of Alex Reyes, who was with 6 others who was requesting for funding. And there is really a financial constraint. So how do you choose from so many researches on which to fund? And he was able to demonstrate how to do it now using this very useful research merit rubric criteria. So as we can see, research is here to stay, especially in the graduate school, and it really requires significant funding. So we should use our research, we should apply and use the research budgets, no, that are available here and abroad. So for the graduate students, the sharing of Dr. Abellano was very useful. Dr. KEPA with regards to ethics standards to follow, and the sharing of Dr. Eric with a very useful formula in selecting the research projects to fund. These are for the schools and the funding agencies. But for the students, it's also very good to use the matrix, the criteria shared by Dr. Eric on the criteria to be used when they are choosing, when you are applying for a research.
Yes, Ma'am Angie,
So
2 minutes left, Ma'am. Thank you.
yeah, I'm done. So with all that, we'd
Thank you,
like
thank you.
we'd like to thank all the panelists, and we'd like to thank all the participants for actively participating in this very successful webinar, very useful to all of us in the graduate school. So may we have the funding that we need. So happy researching. Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Angelina. Now we will have Mr. Marco Alfredo M. Benitez, President PWU, to give us his closing remarks. Thank you.
Dr. Ginger Ketting-Weller, IAS President, Dr. Danny Rantum, Dean of the IAS Graduate School, distinguished speakers, Dr. Kefa Pondi, Dr. Eric Nasucion, PW's own Dean Prime Abellana. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is an honor to speak here today to bring to a close this very productive workshop on research constraints and ethics between two institutions that put a premium on the importance of quality research, particularly at the level of graduate studies. Today, we learned about the different levels of research constraints, ethical considerations that play an important role in shaping graduate-level research, as well as practical constraints that may affect research outcome, including possible solutions. At this time of global pandemic and public health crisis where billions of lives are affected, the availability, accuracy, and accessibility to reliable data is extremely paramount. This is true not only for researchers and experts in the public health sector looking for a cure to the virus itself, but also for those in charge of the response to mitigate the effects of the pandemic. Access to relevant, accurate, and timely information is crucial in directing a response to control the spread of the disease. Constraints such as inaccuracy, delays, and unavailability of data can significantly undermine the effectiveness of the efforts. As institutions of higher learning, both PW and IAS pride ourselves in producing research material from our students which are relevant, accurate, and timely. With this workshop as a starting point, we at PW look forward to a fruitful and mutually beneficial partnership with your institution, which will encourage academic and research cooperation. We hope that this will encourage the setting up of joint research activities in areas of mutual interest, exchange of faculty members, research scholars, or students in the realm of research development, exchange of publications and teaching materials, such as in-house developed case studies, and problem and data sets, and even possibly co-sponsoring or co-organizing international conferences, seminars, courses, workshops, or other similar academic meetings in areas of mutual interest. The possibilities for collaboration are many, and we are grateful and honored that we have taken this first important step in that direction. Thank you very much, and may you and your families continue to stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Marco Benitez. Indeed, that was an encouraging message. To lead us our closing prayer, we have Dr. David Lomoa.
Okay, let us bow down our heads in prayer. Let's pray. Dear loving Lord, thank you, Lord, for this wonderful experience of sharing and receiving knowledge. Thank you, Lord, for being with us through this experience and for making it a successful event. Thank you, Lord, for the kindness of Dr. Nasucion, Dr. Pondi, and Dr. Abellana in sharing some of what they know to us today. Lord, now as we go our separate ways, we ask that you be with us. Protect us from the pandemic that the world is experiencing right now. We pray that you be with our beloved institutions, the Philippines Women University and the Adventist International Institute of Advanced Studies, as we endeavor to bring service to our fellow men. And may all that we do bring glory to your name. Thank you, Lord, for hearing and answering our prayer. For we ask all this in the loving name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. David. So again, please be reminded that the certificates are awarded only after registration and accomplishing evaluation. Evaluation form URL will show at the end of the webinar. To our speakers, the consortium of PWU and IS is honored to invite your presence. As for me, it's an honor to be among such accomplished individuals and to be able to moderate today's webinar. To our participants, thank you all for being here today and taking time. And I wish you all a blessed day. Goodbye. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Madam President.